You're standing in the pro shop. The new irons feel amazing. You hit one on the launch monitor and it flies 15 yards past your old set. You reach for your wallet, stop. That extra distance you're about to pay $1,000 for isn't real. It's a number game, and you're the one being played. I know, because I fell for it. For years, I chased every shiny new set, convinced the technology was making me better. It wasn't. And by the end of this video, I'll show you the one measurement on the box that proves it. The loft trick that turned my 7-iron into something it was never supposed to be. This works whether you're buying new clubs this month or you've had the same set in your bag for a decade. Let me take you back to the moment I figured it out. Standing on the range at my home course on a cold Tuesday morning, holding a receipt I was about to regret. I remember it clearly. I just dropped $900 on a brand new set of game improvement irons. The kid in the shop, nice young man, put me on the simulator and had me hit my old 7-iron first, 140 yards. Then he handed me the new one, 156 yards, 16 yards longer, just like that. I felt like I'd found the fountain of youth. I paid on the spot, drove home grinning, and told my buddy I'd finally beaten Father Time. But here's what nagged at me that night, and it's the thread that unraveled everything I thought I knew about buying irons. That new 7-iron didn't just feel longer, it felt lower. The ball came off flat, and it ran forever when it landed instead of stopping soft the way a 7-iron should. Something was wrong, and it took me 2 more years and a lot of wasted money to understand. So let me start with the first error, the one that cost me the most, because it's the same one that pulled the wallet out of your pocket in that pro shop. The error is believing the number stamped on the bottom of the club means anything at all. When I was learning this game back in the day, a 7-iron was a 7-iron. Every brand, every set, the loft was somewhere around 34, 35, maybe 36 degrees. That number told you how high and how far the ball would go. It was honest. You could compare one company's 7-iron to another and know exactly what you were getting. That's gone now. And nobody told us. Let me give you the real figures, because this is the evidence that changed how I look at every iron on the shelf. A modern game improvement 7-iron from the big names sits around 27 to 30 degrees of loft. Some of them, the so-called distance irons, are down at 26.5 degrees. Do you understand what that means? The 7-iron they sold me was lofted like a 5-iron from 20 years ago. They took a 5-iron, stamped a 7 on the sole, and sold me the extra distance as if their engineers had performed a miracle. That's the whole trick. That's the 16 yards I paid $900 for on that simulator. I wasn't hitting the ball better. I was hitting a stronger lofted club with a longer shaft and calling it a 7-iron. If I'd taken my old 7-iron and simply bent it 3 degrees stronger for about $10, I'd have gotten the same distance. But that wouldn't have earned anybody $900, would it? Now, here's why this matters, beyond just feeling cheated, and this is the part that actually hurts your game. A 7-iron is supposed to launch high and land soft, so it stops on the green. When they jack the loft down to 27 degrees, that ball comes in low and hot, and it releases across the green and off the back. So you're hitting it longer, sure, but you can't hold a green with it. For a senior golfer with a moderate swing speed, this is a disaster because we need height and spin to stop the ball, and they've engineered both of those things out of the club to sell us a bigger number. I felt that on the course. I couldn't figure out why I was flying greens with clubs. I used to land soft. It wasn't me. It was the loft. The truth was sitting right there on the spec sheet the whole time, and I never thought to look, because who checks the loft of a 7-iron? You trust that a 7 is a 7. That trust is exactly what they're counting on. But the loft trick was only the first thing I uncovered, and honestly, it wasn't even the most expensive mistake I made. Because here's what I did next, and maybe you've done it too. Once I got humbled, I decided I was going to buy real irons, serious irons, the kind the tour players use. That's the second error, and it's an ego trap. And I walked right into it with my chest puffed out. I went and bought a set of players' irons. Beautiful things, thin blades, tiny sweet spot, forged from a single billet of soft carbon steel. They looked incredible in the bag. There was just one problem. I couldn't hit them. Not consistently, not to save my life, My swing speed and my strike weren't good enough to get those blades airborne with any authority, and every shot I hit off the toe or the heel felt like I'd been stung by a hornet. Let me tell you the number that matters here. A blade or a true player's iron has a sweet spot roughly the size of a nickel, and the moment you miss it, you lose distance and the face twists. A game improvement iron with perimeter weighting and a wide sole has a forgiving area 2 to 3 times larger, and on off-center hits, it holds ball speed far better. Independent robot testing has shown that on a strike missed by half an inch, a forgiving cavity back iron can keep as much as 10 to 12 miles per hour more ball speed than a blade. For a guy who doesn't hit the center every time, and that's every single one of us over 50, that difference is the difference between the green and the front bunker. But the marketing shows you the Tour Pro with the blade. It shows you the trophy and the sunset and the perfect divot, and you think, I want to play what the best in the world play. So you buy a club designed for a man who swings 120 miles an hour and practices 6 hours a day, and then you blame yourself when it doesn't work. I blamed myself for a whole season. I thought I'd lost my swing. I hadn't. I'd bought the wrong tool, and my pride wouldn't let me admit it. When I finally swallowed hard and went back to a wider-soled, more forgiving iron, my scores dropped 4 strokes in a month. 4 strokes. Not from lessons. From admitting I wasn't the golfer the magazine ad was selling to. So that's 2 errors. The number lies to you, and your ego sells you a club built for somebody else's swing. And by now you might be thinking the fix is simple. Just buy a forgiving iron with an honest loft, and you're done. I wish it were that easy. Because there's a third thing they never put in the ad, and it was quietly stealing distance from me the entire time I thought I was gaining it. If you want to go even deeper on everything I just walked you through, I want to tell you about something that will help. I put all of this research, the full loft charts, the gapping worksheets, the shaft selection guide, everything into a book called Swing Strong. It covers the full swing from equipment decisions all the way through to course management for senior golfers, and it goes well beyond what I can fit into a single video. If any of this has resonated with you today, check the description below where you'll find the link to grab your copy. It's the honest version of the game I wish someone had handed me on that cold Tuesday morning. Now, back to the third thing. They never put in the ad, and it was quietly stealing distance from me the entire time I thought I was gaining it. The shaft. Nobody talks about the shaft. Here's the third error. I always bought whatever shaft came standard in the club, and for a man my age, that standard was almost always too stiff and too heavy. When you buy an iron off the rack, it usually comes with a stiff flex steel shaft because that's what fills the display and that's what the stronger players demand. But for a senior with a swing speed under about 85 miles an hour with the driver, a stiff steel shaft is like trying to crack a whip that won't bend. The shaft can't load and release, so the club head arrives late and open, and you lose height, distance, and accuracy all at once. I played stiff steel for years because I thought regular flex was for beginners. Ego, again. When I finally got put on a launch monitor with a lighter, softer shaft, my numbers jumped in a way no new club head ever gave me. My launch angle came up almost 3 degrees. My carry distance went up 8 yards. My dispersion, how far left and right, my shots scattered, tightened up by nearly a third, and I hadn't changed the club head at all. Same iron, different shaft. Think about that. I spent years buying new heads chasing 8 yards when 8 yards was sitting inside the shaft the whole time, a part most golfers never even consider. And here's the part that really got me. A lighter graphite shaft, which used to be seen as something only for people who couldn't handle steel, is now one of the smartest choices a senior can make. Graphite dampens the vibration that wrecks arthritic hands and elbows, and the weight savings let you swing faster with less effort. But when I was coming up, graphite in irons was considered a crutch. So plenty of us refused it and beat our joints to pieces with heavy steel out of stubbornness. That's the fourth error right there, turning down graphite because of an old prejudice that the industry was happy to let us keep believing. Now, I need to stop here and talk directly to you. If you've been sitting there thinking this whole video is for people with money to burn on a new set, Maybe you've got irons in the garage right now that you've played for 10 years and you have zero intention of replacing them. Good. This next part is built specifically for you because you do not need to spend a dime to fix most of what I just described. Here's what you do this week. Take your current irons to any club fitter or even a decent repair shop and ask them two things. First, ask them to check and adjust your lie angle. Most people have no idea their irons are pointing them off target before they even swing. If the lie is too upright, you pull everything left. Too flat, you push it right. A club technician can bend most iron heads to fit you in about 15 minutes for a few dollars a club, and suddenly the clubs you already own start pointing where you're aiming. Second, ask them to check your gapping and adjust your lofts. This is the beautiful part. If your set has those inconsistent gaps I'll tell you about in a minute, or if you want a little more stopping power, a good technician can bend your existing lofts a degree or two to smooth everything out. Same clubs, better performance. No $900 receipt. And while you're there, if your hands ache after a round, ask about reshafting your favorite irons with lighter graphite. Rebuilding the irons you already trust costs a fraction of a new set and can give you back that launch and distance the marketing wants you to believe only lives in this year's model. I did this with an old set I almost threw away, and it outperformed a brand new set I'd paid full price for. That's not a story the manufacturers want you telling your foursome, but it's the truth, and it leads me straight into the fifth error, the one that kept me on the hamster wheel longest. The fifth error is believing you need to replace your irons every year or two because the technology has moved on. I bought that story completely. Every spring, a new model dropped, promising more distance, more forgiveness, more of everything, and every spring I lined up to trade in perfectly good clubs. Let me tell you what independent year-over-year testing actually shows, because this is the number that finally broke the spell for me. When testers hit this year's flagship iron against the same company's model from 4 or 5 years ago, the real-world difference in distance and forgiveness is often within 1 to 3 yards and a hair of ball speed, within the margin of a slightly better or worse strike. Essentially nothing you could ever feel on the course. The distance gains they advertise year to year almost always come right back to that loft trick. They strengthen the loft another half a degree, add a little length to the shaft, and print a bigger number. It's the same club wearing a new shirt. I traded in 3 sets over 5 years, chasing improvements that laboratory data says didn't meaningfully exist. That's thousands of dollars gone for the privilege of restamping the same performance with a newer logo. Once I saw that pattern, I couldn't unsee it, and I started getting a little angry, honestly, because it dawned on me that the whole cycle was designed to keep me buying the release calendar, the pros switching clubs every season, the tour van, all of it built to make me feel like my 2-year-old irons were obsolete when they were fine. Better than fine, they were paid for, but anger wasn't going to fix my scorecard, so I kept digging, and that's when I found the 6th error, the one hiding at the top and bottom of every set. The 6th error is buying a full set that includes long irons you have no business hitting while ignoring the clubs that would actually save you shots. When you buy irons, they still sell you the traditional set, and for many of us that includes a 4-iron and sometimes a 3-iron. Here's the problem. With today's jacked up lofts, a modern 4-iron might only be 20 degrees or even less, and it's got a long shaft and a small, effective hitting area low on the face. For a senior swing, getting that ball in the air is nearly impossible. I carried a 4-iron I successfully used maybe twice a year, and both times were probably luck. It just sat in my bag looking important and doing nothing. Meanwhile, the smart play, the one the marketing doesn't push nearly as hard, was to replace those long irons with hybrids or even higher lofted fairway woods. A hybrid with the same loft as that 4-iron launches the ball far higher and lands it far softer because the weight is down low and back, and the wider sole glides through the turf and rough instead of digging. Testing on moderate swing speed shows a hybrid can carry the ball meaningfully higher and hold a green where the equivalent long iron rolls off the back every time. I finally pulled my 3 and 4-iron out, put in 2 hybrids, and my approach shots from distance went from a prayer to a legitimate scoring chance. So there's the pattern of everything I got wrong. I trusted the number I bought for my ego. I ignored the shaft. I refused graphite. I upgraded every year for nothing. And I carried clubs I couldn't hit while skipping the ones that would help. 6 errors, 6 ways I paid for the privilege of playing worse. But I told you at the start, there was one measurement on the box that proves the whole thing, and one fix you could do this weekend that ties it all together. That's the 7th error, and it's the biggest, because fixing it exposes every other trick at once. This is what I found buried in the fitting data, the thing almost nobody checks. And once you understand it, you will never buy irons blindly again. Here it is. The 7th and biggest error is buying irons by the number on the club instead of by the actual distance gap between them. And the fix is a gapping test. Let me explain why this is the master key. Because of loft jacking, the clubs in a modern set are not spaced the way you think. When manufacturers strengthen the lofts to inflate distance, they don't always keep the gaps even from club to club. And here is the dirty little secret that finally made me furious enough to make this video. Look at what happened to the pitching wedge. A traditional pitching wedge was around 50 to 52 degrees of loft. The modern pitching wedge that comes in these distance sets is often 43 or 44 degrees. They strengthened it almost a full club. Now think about what that does. Your sand wedge is still around 54 or 56 degrees because a sand wedge has to be lofted to work in the bunker. So now there's a giant canyon between your 43-degree pitching wedge and your 54-degree sand wedge. 10, 11 degrees of gap when every other gap in your set is 4 degrees. That's a hole in your bag of 30 or 40 yards, right in the exact scoring zone where you hit the most shots into greens. And how do they fix the hole they created? They sell you more wedges, a gap wedge, an approach wedge, extra clubs at $150 a pop to fill a gap that only exists because they jacked the loft of your pitching wedge to sell you distance you didn't need. Do you see the whole machine now? They strengthen the lofts to win the distance test in the shop that creates a gap in your short game, and then they sell you the clubs to patch the gap they manufactured. You pay coming and going. I found this laid out in the fitting data and confirmed it looking at the published loft specs, comparing sets from the 1990s against sets from the last few years. Right there in black and white. The lofts march stronger year after year, decade after decade, quietly, while the numbers on the soles stayed the same. Nobody announced it. It was hidden in plain sight on a spec sheet nobody reads. So here is what you do this weekend, and it costs you nothing but an hour. Take your irons and wedges to a launch monitor, and there are cheap ones at almost every range now, or find a range with marked distances and a good eye. Hit 5 or 6 shots with each club, throw out the worst one, and write down the average carry distance. Not the number on the club, the actual carry, then line them up in order. You will find 2 things, and they will change how you play forever. First, you'll find clubs that carry almost the same distance, meaning one of them is dead weight you can pull out of the bag. Second, and this is the big one, you'll find that gaping hole between your pitching wedge and your sand wedge that I just described. Now you know exactly what you need. A single gap wedge at around 48 or 50 degrees to fill it, and you know it because your own data told you, not because a salesman pointed at a shiny rack. That gapping test is the truth the whole industry is built on top of and hopes you never perform. Because the moment you measure your real carry distances, the number on the sole becomes meaningless, the yearly upgrade becomes pointless, and the loft trick stops working on you completely. You stop buying clubs by their name and start buying them by what they actually do. That is the entire game. And it took me years and thousands of wasted dollars to learn what a free hour with a launch monitor would have told me all along. I think about that cold Tuesday morning a lot, standing on the range with that $900 receipt, so proud of 16 yards that were never mine. If I could go back, I'd hand that younger version of myself a notepad instead and tell him to measure everything and trust nothing that's printed on a club. If you take one thing from me today, let it be this. The distance was never in the new club. It was in the honesty of knowing your own numbers. And that honesty is the one thing they can't sell you and can't take away. You're the kind of golfer who wants the truth over the sales pitch, or you wouldn't have made it this far with me. So do me a favor. Go check the loft on your pitching wedge. Then come back and tell me in the comments what number is stamped in there. Is it 43, 44, something even stronger? I read every one of them, and I want to see just how far this loft creep has gone in your bag. Leave a comment right now with that number before you forget. And if you're tired of paying for hype and want the honest version of this game, stick with me, because there's a whole group of us now who measure instead of trust. Next time, I'm going to show you the truth about golf balls and why the premium ball you're playing might be costing you distance off every iron in the bag you just measured. If you want to go deeper, the free ebook has the full loft chart and the gapping worksheet ready to print. But whatever you do, run that gapping test this weekend. It's the cheapest stroke saver in the game, and it's the one they hoped you'd never find. I'm glad you stuck around, because I want to invite you into the Honest Fairway Club. This video was the overview inside. I pick up right where we stopped and walk you through the whole set buying system. Ask me your own questions, and a real person answers you. You're not alone in there, senior golfers, like you already belong. Just point your phone at the code on screen, and you can cancel anytime. If this helped you feel more confident about buying irons, do stay with me. Subscribe and look around the channel, because there's plenty more here to guide you, one simple step at a time.